Hello, folks. JD Wessel back here with another episode of the Wildcat Breakdown. This will be episode 4. Obviously, I'm your host, JD Wessel, and I'm joined here by Jaden Cover, Andrew Pfeiffer, and Craig Sullivan. Craig is one of our newer hosts that we've had. Not host, he's actually just a guest. But what we're talking about today is Mike Riley's firing, and obviously there's a lot of opinions about it, but a lot of the opinions that we have seen from Husker fans have been the displeasingness of Mike Riley being the coach and obviously ending a 4-8 season this season. Ending his Husker career 19-19 as the head coach. So let's get your thoughts first, Jaden. What are your thoughts on the firing of Mike Riley?
You feel bad for the guy because regardless of how he was as a coach, probably one of the nicest people we've ever seen at the helms of Nebraska. He was able to handle this entire situation well, but everyone knew it was going to happen. It was the best thing for Nebraska, and I think it's going to be the best thing for Mike Riley in the end because he was in over his head.
Well, going 19-19 in the first 3 years of coaching a D1 college, which he has had experience doing, at Oregon State, but turning a program that was in the hands of Pelini, which was at a steady 9-4 record for the past 3 or 4 years, and having to take that program and get a 19-19 record in 3 years is a very, I want to say, mediocre job. I mean, we were in the right position to fire Mike Riley, but I got nothing else to say about that.
Well, what people often overlook is when Bo left, it was a very toxic situation. He turned some players against Nebraska, against Sean Eichhorst, and Eichhorst went out and he made a hire that was opposite of Bo Pelini instead of looking at what could possibly be the best solution going forward, something that Bill Moose is not going to overlook. When talking about Mike Riley, everyone needs to understand he did handle it well. He did not go sound off. He was even there at the press conference of Moose fired him. He was pure class. He left the program, I think, in a better state than Bo did, player-wise. He got some good players coming here. We'll have to see how it progresses.
No, when this takes me back a few years ago. I remember when Bo Pelini got fired, he held a player meeting at Lincoln High School, and he pretty much got all the players together. And from what I heard, reportedly, he trashed the program and handled it a completely different style than the way Mike Riley did. Mike Riley held his poise, and I just thought it was, he handled it pretty well, like you said, Craig.
Kind of piggybacking off both of you, you can definitely tell just how much Mike Riley as a person meant to the players, as a coach as well. When Bo got fired, there were players defending him, but it wasn't as noticeable as it was with Mike Riley. I know I've been on Twitter this weekend, and every Nebraska player has been, saying thank you to Mike Riley for being not only a coach, but like a second father figure. We saw just anyone that kind of knew him as a person is kind of taken aback by him being firing. Even though he knew it was coming, it still kind of stings for a lot of the players.
Well, like you said, when Bo Pelini got fired, there was a little bit of change in the program, but nothing really impacted the players terribly much. Now you got Mike Riley leaving the program, and there's lots of people wanting to transfer now away from Nebraska for their senior years, going to other schools.
Including Stanley Morgan Jr., who's arguably the best player on the team. I would say he's probably the best player on the team after this season. And when I saw Stanley Morgan tweet that out, and then also saw Keyshawn, a player who was supposed to be on Huskers this season, I saw Keyshawn tweet towards him, thinking about it. And, it just really shows that Mike Riley put a big impact on the guys. And obviously seeing him get fired hurt a lot of the players. And I think for some of the players that, Stanley Morgan, what is he going to be, a junior or senior?
Senior next year.
He's going to be a senior, and obviously it's tough for a player like him to go through that process of a new coach again. So I think him just being displeased is more him liking Mike Riley or also him not wanting to have to go through that process again.
Yeah, it's very tough for Stanley Morgan. I think he's more talking about going towards the draft. He was one of the leaders in the Big Ten among receiving yards. And it's tough for people. They don't think about Morgan. Morgan was recruited by the Bo's program. He's been dealing with Riley's program. He likes Coach Keith Williams, who may not be coming back. I know a lot of the wide receivers are talking about that. This would be his third coaching program in 4 or 5 years, that's not really a recipe for success for people when you have to learn a new system possibly. A new coach coming in.
Just having him go through that, it'll build handling adversity in situations like that, which especially will help in the NFL when you're handling with problems like that. Because when you're in a pro team, you never know who you're going to play for.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's going to help him in the future, dealing with all these coaching situations, as well as preparing him for the draft. Should he leave Nebraska for his senior year and head towards the draft? I really can't say.
Most Nebraska fans will say no.
No, exactly. But he could rise potential for himself in the NFL.
I just got to butt in, Andrew, and if I'm Stanley Morgan here, I know you're saying that's going to help him prepare for the draft, but college is the time where you get to control where you want to go. When you're in the NFL, you have no control over what's happening. It's all about the owners. You're just a pawn in their little game. You're completely at the mercy of them. In college, why wouldn't you want to have control? I mean, does he want? Especially, let's say he plays another year under another staff at Nebraska. That's 3 coaching staffs in 5 years at Nebraska. Goes to the NFL. That's 4 coaching staffs in 6 years. He just wants some steady ground, and he's hoping that he can just find that going now to the NFL and hopefully make his way onto a roster and ease into it. I get where he's coming from as a Nebraska fan. I think he should come back, but I see where he's coming from.
I'd agree with that, and kind of just to quickly sway over to a new topic, what I was thinking about, just right after the season ended, is who will be our starting quarterback this upcoming season. I mean, we have 3 quarterbacks that have a serious potential to be the starting quarterback. We obviously saw Tanner Lee start the whole season, given the concussion. But, I mean, for Tanner Lee, do you think he has a good shot to return as starting quarterback? It obviously depends on the coaching staff and, who's in there and what they like. But, from what we saw this season, do you think we might be seeing a change?
Well, it depends on the coaching style, honestly. You see Tanner Lee as more of a pocket passer. He doesn't really he's not very mobile outside the pocket. We have Patrick O'Brien and Tristan Gebbia. And Patrick O'Brien's kind of similar to Tanner Lee. He might be a little more mobile than Tanner Lee. We haven't really known because we haven't really seen him play in games much. And Gebbia is a redshirt freshman. He hasn't played a single down yet in this season. So a lot of potential for these 2 young players. And plus you even got Darlington.
Oh, yeah.
Darlington's very underlooked. I don't think a lot of people really notice him. And he was on the point after attempts in the field goal. He would be the holder. And a lot of people underlooked him, but I believe that he could get some playing time eventually in a quarterback if situations were to go the way they were.
See, I don't see Darlington switching from wide receiver. I think he's too late into it to make that change. But I think it all depends on what coach we have in here. If we get another pro style like Mike Riley, we're probably going to see Lee for another year just because, he's been there at least. He may not be that great, but he can at least get you through year 1. Mm-hmm. But I think if we see someone come in with the spread offense, similar to what Scott Frost's running at UCF, I really like what Gebbia shows. I watched him in the spring game, and I think he was the best quarterback there. Obviously, that's not against, the Wisconsin's defenses, and it's not even against R1s necessarily. But I like that he poses as a dual threat option, and I'd like to see Nebraska get back to, some read option, because I think if you don't have a mobile quarterback in college football right now, you're going to struggle.
One thing, I'm not taking anything away from Tanner Lee. I like Tanner Lee. I think he's a great passer. I just don't think he's mobile enough. But looking back at before the 2017 season when Tanner Lee went to the Manning passing camp, Peyton Manning quoted that he was one of the best passers there. Just the potential showing for this young man, especially heading into his senior year, transferred from Tulane, he could make a big impact in the NFL running an actual pro-style offense, because running a pro-style offense in college football just isn't something you want to see, especially from Nebraska, which has never been done, ever. And look what it leads to. It leads to a worse record than since 1961.
For sure, and to talk about the running game, like you guys were saying, to run that read option, I think it ultimately is just having that alternate option, because from what we saw this season, we can't really settle with the running game, considering we finished 113th in the nation in rushing, and obviously that's not Nebraska football. That's not what we kind of the tradition that we've grown into. We need to get back to the running game, and I think having a mobile quarterback, having that second or third option on the running game, that gives Nebraska a whole new widespread opportunity to run the ball.
Well, we definitely need that because I went to a couple games this year. I tried to avoid watching them on TV at times, gotta be honest. But from the games I went to, I'd pay attention to when we're handing the ball off, what the backside D end and what the backside backer are doing. Because a lot of times those guys go unblocked because there's just not a lot of men up front. They crash so far down. If Tanner Lee would have pulled one of those, and he's a slow guy. I mean, we all know that. I mean, I'm not saying I'm going to beat him in a race, but he's not D1, speed to where he can pick up a bunch of yards. But even if he pulled that, you're looking at 5 yards at least because they were crashing so far down and committing to the run that our running backs, and sometimes our line didn't stand a chance of picking up everyone just because there was no other threat than we're handing the ball off to a running back.
That was definitely a huge problem for our offense. Was not only our Tanner Lee couldn't move in the pocket, it was as well as our line couldn't pick up the blocks that we needed, like you said, Jade. And sometimes it'd be almost impossible for linemen to pick up blocks like that. And that's why I think our program is starting to recognize that style of offense doesn't work for college football. And some of the options here that they're looking at for hiring a new head coach was Kim Nioma. How do you say his name? The Navy head coach Nyam Atalolo.
See, I'm not gonna say that triple option can't work because Tom Osborne obviously won a few national championships running the triple option, but I'm not sure in today's day and age we can get that, and I just don't think we have the personnel yet. I mean, back in the '90s when that's when we were running that. We had, these nasty linemen that would just get after it, and, we had the fullback to get downhill quickly, and we had the personnel to do it. If he was to come in, we'd be sitting at 4-8 for at least another 3 years just because we'd be able to get nothing going offensively. We don't have the personnel to do it.
And that'd be enough time for other teams that would play us to figure out how we run the option and give them enough time to be able to defend it, even if we did have the good players.
Well, and a lot of people forget, Nebraska did run the triple option, but that wasn't all we ran. All Navy runs is a triple option. I mean, Nebraska would line up in an I formation a lot of times, and they pitch it to Lawrence Phillips, Amon Green, and we'd get a lot of just basic, power, toss, ISO, those plays coming at you. What you see a lot of just pro style running the NFL, and we had a good play action threat. I just don't think, Navy runs an option. Like their triple option isn't what Nebraska's triple option.
I don't think Nebraska right now has the running backs for a triple option. People do forget Trey Bryant only played 2 games this year. He was less than 200 yards behind the leading rusher for Nebraska this year. That's not good. So, when you're looking at that, people forget Trey Bryant will be back. He'll be a good running back that they can lean on. He was very good during the first 2 games he was playing against probably mediocre opponents. So, there's nothing really he can do too much about that. When you're looking at coaches that run the triple option, that'll probably be good enough to beat the Minnesotas and Northwesterns, but you're not going to beat an Ohio State, a Michigan, or top-level Penn State, Big Ten teams running a triple option. That seems like something that can keep you competitive and kind of outsmart the mid to lower teams, but I don't know if that's going to be a successful strategy going forward.
The one benefit, though, would be, if all we're doing is running the ball, the clock runs out, and we're only losing 30-3 instead of 60-3.
Yeah, so, let's just go straight into who we want as our head coach. If we'd have to pick, and I think a lot of people can say Scott Frost is the right guy.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And obviously everyone in Nebraska has him at the number 1. What are you guys' thoughts on not only Scott Frost, but some other coaches that we've heard kind of around the silo?
First of all, I want to focus back on Scott Frost. How do you not give this guy the job? Husker legend. He took a team that was 0-12 last year to 12-0 2 years ago. Well, still. Took a team that was 0-12 2 years ago to a team that's now 12-0, ranked 13th in the nation right now.
First ever coach to do it.
they're only one of the still undefeated teams in college football right now. I think them and one other team
Wisconsin.
maybe, because Alabama lost, this weekend, and I think it's just huge how Scott Frost was able to move this program so much with the team that he had. I mean, you look at Florida, and there's not a lot of football fans. Like their games drew maybe 40,000 people plus. Maybe not that many people. You got half the size of Memorial Stadium, not as cool as an atmosphere, but you got a guy that took his program to the next level, which is, I would like to see Nebraska play UCF, and I'd like to see, I think UCF could even potentially beat Nebraska,
They
easily,
smoke us.
yeah, easily, and I think just showing that, I think Scott Frost would be a perfect fit in Nebraska. Obviously, we've heard the rumors going around, the 7 years, $355 million deal.
35.
That's what I meant. 35.
That's a lot of money,
that's a
yeah.
lot of money. But you got to consider right here that they're still paying off. They just finished paying off Bo Pelini, or they may be finishing it up.
January 2019.
They're also still paying off Sean Eichhorst, or how do you say his last name?
Yeah,
Eichhorst.
right.
Yeah, I got it right. And then they're going to be paying off Mike Riley for years to come. So you got to consider your options here. But I think Scott Frost is for sure. I mean, I'm going to be Husker biased here. Like I think he's.
Well, I mean,
the job.
I wouldn't even say it's Husker bias. I mean, he went to Nebraska.
Mm-hmm.
He played for the team.
Won a championship.
He's got family that lives there, lives here in Nebraska.
Uh-huh.
And another thing about UCF, how far will he take that program? I think this season is as far as he could ever get UCF to go.
Mm-hmm.
The schedule strength will never be there. Even if you play out of conference, you're not guaranteed a 12-0 season every year.
You have to play, the Bamas 4 times.
You have to go undefeated if you play for UCF to even have a chance at a national title. Like, let's look at Boise State back in...
Oh, yeah. It's the same situation. With Boise State, it wasn't you go undefeated 1 year. You had to go undefeated the next
3 or 4
years.
Here's the thing about that. Some people underlook Frost because they're like, oh, maybe he's having a good season. Like, remember Nebraska last year, how we were having this great season, and then we got blown out by Ohio State. It was still a decent season.
Yeah.
It was like kind of like a Bo Pelini season in similarity record-wise. But if you look at Frost...
Win the games you're supposed to win.
Yeah, exactly. But, obviously Mike Riley couldn't get it done. But when you look at Scott Frost here, he's not only winning games, but he's averaging 48 points per game.
Yeah.
Good football teams will average high points like that.
The thing I like about Frost is, he took an 0-12 team, and the first thing he basically told his players was, he's like, I see a lot of, he's like, this team is not 0-12 talent-wise, and I think what we saw with Riley is we weren't a 4-8 talent team. We had a lot more talent than that. So Frost obviously was able to get in there, not even get his recruits settled in. You figure, let's say he started his recruiting class the year before, he started out. So you're looking at maybe at the most, you got some redshirt sophomores or just true sophomores. Like that's the farthest he's gone as his recruits. So he was able to take someone else's recruits and turn them into a good football team. The bad side, though, is we haven't seen what he can do as a recruiter yet. It's very tough to tell what he's going to come in here. I think what we will see is, I know Craig, you've talked about it before, a Bo honeymoon, where, when Bo had Bill Callahan's recruits, he was able to make them just this amazing team. And back when our defense, was the best defense in the nation. So we could see something like that happen, where he comes in and Nebraska at least has immediate success.
There's a lot of...
Yeah, there was. I would say going back to that no-win UCF team, I don't think that's really predictive of the talent that was at UCF. People forget George O'Leary in 2013. They won the Fiesta Bowl against Baylor, 52-42. And the year before the 0-12 season, they were still 9-4 in the American Conference. They're still playing in a bowl game.
Mm-hmm.
That was not a team devoid of talent. He came there was talent on the roster. I think Scott Frost obviously is the top choice for many Nebraska fans. He's done a great job with the offense at Oregon. He's going to develop quarterbacks. I think he'll be a great candidate there. I think someone else at Nebraska would probably look at be Justin Fuente if for some reason Frost stayed at UCF or did not come to Nebraska. Very interesting job. He's down at Virginia Tech.
I see
So Craig, wait, do you think Scott Frost is the right coach though?
I think he probably will be the right coach. I think he'll be able to unify some of the people who want more of an old school offense, people who want new school offense. He's kind of the Tom Herman, should you say, of this coaching carousel.
There's a lot of similarity I can see between Mike Riley and Bill Callahan. Not necessarily great coaches, and especially since Mike Riley with his pro style offense, Bill Callahan kind of ran a similar. Because Bill Callahan, he was an NFL. Bill Callahan is currently an NFL coach. He's getting a lot of praise right now in the NFL. He's doing a successful job, and I believe if Mike Riley went to the NFL, he could potentially do the same thing. But I'm straying away from Mike Riley here. I think that not only were they good coaches, they were really good recruiters.
Well, I think the thing about Mike Riley and Bill Callahan having the success, like those guys, let's just focus in on Mike Riley. He's more of a coach that likes to praise the guys to do a good job and, love what you do. And I think if he would go up to that next level, I think it would kind of go away from the more like coaching part of it. Honestly, like the guys, once you get into the NFL, they don't really need that coaching. It's more just the training. And I think that's the problem down here is the college guys need the coaching. They need the experience from a coach who knows what they're doing. And I think in the NFL, it's kind of just a given of the players knowing what they're doing. It's just going out there and, having a coach that knows how to root them on and keep them going.
Point them in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. I mean, in the NFL, you said it perfectly, With college, you got to coach guys up. You got people that still haven't peaked athletically. Their bodies are still maturing. Some guys are still growing a couple inches in college. In the NFL, you just got to tell them where to be and when to be there.
Yeah.
They just got to, once they're in the right position, they're going to make the plays.
And that's the thing. I mean, I think Mike Riley did a good job on keeping the players prepared in an aspect of, knowing what their assignment is. I think it's more just them wanting it. I mean, when we saw Nebraska play, it was like you saw a lot of guys on the field just look like they're giving up on plays and, not having that emotion. But I think once you get onto the next level, obviously the players are going to bring it every play. They know what they're playing for. They're playing for millions of dollars.
Yeah.
They know that if they don't do their job alone, they're not going to be playing.
Yeah, I think in college, more you're relying on some of your assistants. I do not think Nebraska had quality assistants during Mike Riley's tenure, especially at the defense and offensive coordinator positions. Danny Langsdorff obviously has made some very questionable decisions play calling wise, and Mark Banker was not good. Bob Diaco was not good this year. Mike Riley takes a lot of heat for that. I don't think he was the main brain trust wanting Bob Diaco. I think that was more Sean Eichhorst. So Mike Riley was in the NFL, but he did have Ryan Leaf as his quarterback. So there was some friction there. I don't think he was really prepared for that. It's just tough for Mike Riley. He's one of the nicest guys in college football, as people say. People did end up starting giving up, I think, on the team, but that could have also been more from outside fan support, just saying from week 2 or 3, he's going to be fired. He's going to be fired. Eventually, I think that gets to you as players, especially when the season starts going as bad as it did after they lost to Northern Illinois.
You're right, because not only are they playing for to get to a bowl game, because it was obvious that we were going to be scrapping to even try to get to a bowl game, which we didn't get to. But they're also playing to keep their coaches' jobs.
To add on to that, you got to look at the schedule. I mean, I know we lost games we weren't supposed to lose, but then again, you look at our schedule. I mean, the Big Ten is arguably the best conference in college football right now. I'd say we're probably the most competitive up and down. I mean, given a couple teams, but I feel like I feel like you can kind of get a sense that anyone could beat anyone in the Big Ten. I mean, we saw Iowa destroy Ohio State, and then Ohio State, they bounce right back, and they're probably, they have a real good chance to make the college football playoffs if they beat Wisconsin.
And then Iowa,
which we could see. Purdue. Yeah, I mean, I feel like really anyone can beat anyone in the Big Ten. And with that said, I feel like all teams are competitive in the Big Ten, despite the records, given the Nebraskas, Marylands, and Rutgers, teams like that. But yeah, I think the Big Ten is a really competitive conference, and kind of just going along what you said.
The thing that really does stink, not only were we 4-8, but we very easily could have been 1-11. first
Yeah.
game, took a 4th down stop on the goal line to
Yeah.
beat Arkansas State. You look at Rutgers, that game was close. I think we were losing
10-point game, but
10-point
yeah,
game,
still.
but we had to pull away at the end
Yeah.
to win it. And then you look at Purdue, obviously the 11-point comeback. The only real game that was like, wow, we just beat them was Illinois.
Yeah.
And Illinois was 1-11. So we could have been one of those, and we didn't even. It was 28-6.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I understand that. Yeah, we beat them by 3 touchdowns, but
It was still a competitive game.
Yeah,
I mean, early on.
If our '90s team, that's a 70-0 game
Yeah.
where our third stringers are putting up huge numbers. I mean,
Yeah. And another thing about that is we saw Baylor go 1-11, which, I wouldn't say took us by surprise. Obviously they've had some troubles in their school.
yeah,
But to see a program like Baylor that was playing against Michigan State, number 8 versus number 5, just 2 or 3 years ago, to see them go 1-11, it really caught me by surprise. And then, sure enough, every week we saw Baylor lose, beat Kansas, lose.
Ooh.
And,
Yeah, I think that's really tough. I think if you're going to look at Mike Riley's defining point in his career, to be back in 2016 when we played Wisconsin, we were undefeated. We were ranked real high. I think if we win that game, I think we carry a little momentum into going to Ohio State.
Yep.
If we lose that, we're still only one last team going through the rest of our schedule. We think the Iowa game would have meant a little bit more to the players. And that's kind of the what if. I mean, they had a chance in overtime. I mean, Wisconsin did miss that extra point, so if they could have converted there, maybe that'll be different. But I think when people aren't looking at for next year, it's a brutal schedule.
yeah.
You have Colorado, you're playing at Michigan, you're playing at Wisconsin, you're playing at Northwestern, you have home against Minnesota, at Ohio State, home against Michigan State, then you're finishing with Iowa in Kinnick Stadium. That's
So,
not, that's not
all
a
our-
favorable schedule.
all our
for a
tough
new coach.
conference games are against, or all our away conference games are against the best opponents. But on the bright side, at least you get the easy wins at home. So usually, nothing's an easy win anymore for Nebraska. But
And, the thing about that is, sadly we could call it a rebuilding year. But I think the thing about that is if Scott Frost can prove himself worthy to get these players coached up and ready for the big games that we're going to see this year, and at least win 2 or 3 of those,
or just compete.
Yeah,
let's not get blown out.
if he can compete, keep it close, win a couple of those close games, I think it's going to really just change the tide of Nebraska and what we've seen from the fans. Kind of the torn, decisions on what the fans want and what they don't want. I think it'll bring us together if he can scrap across a couple wins, on the road, couple of tough road tests, and, kind of turn this around next season.
I think if you're any coach
If he was hired.
Yeah.
Any coach that comes in next year, don't look at the record because I think 6 wins would be a good season next year, especially with all the transfers that are probably going to happen, kids that, decommit. Let's give it 2-3 years, but just wait to see what happens. First year, just how are we prepared? Is our team playing with a lot of passion? Are we in the right position? Are we able to hang with Ohio State at least until the 3rd, 4th quarter and show some fight? But I think Bob Diaco's quote, I think it was 2 days ago, was probably the best thing I've heard through this kind of dismal season. It was, we're 4-8. Obviously, that's not Nebraska football. I want to get to the point where we're disappointed if we're 8-4. And I just like that attitude that he had because Eichhorst never really showed that passion.
I believe Bill Moose was the one that said that.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Bill Moose. I don't even know who I said.
Yeah, and really it's all speculation right now. A lot of people can say Scott Frost is going to be our coach, but at the end of the day, it all comes down to what his decision is himself. There's going to be a lot of people that talk, a lot of media, and, overall I just think us Nebraska fans are going to have to wait. I think Bill Moose actually has us in the right direction. He's waiting, finding his right candidate that he wants, and I think, at the end of the day, he's going to find the right guy. And, I think that's really all we have to talk about. You guys have anything else?
I just got one thing here. Nebraska's new interim head coach, Trent Bray, who is this guy? First of all, I've never seen this dude in my life, and I was.
He's the linebacker coach. He was actually considered for, I believe, the San Jose defensive coordinator job last year. He has connections to Bill Moose. I think his dad was a coach under him at one time in some school, but he's a very interesting guy. I mean, he's a pretty young linebacker coach. He's considered probably one of the more like rising star coaches. I mean,
Okay.
Nebraska linebackers, I mean, didn't have that terrible of a year. If you look at like Chris Webber and
Chris Webber was a
Marcus
stud.
Newby and people like that, so I don't think it was really on him.
No, he's fullback. No,
Yeah.
but
I mean, Luke Gifford's
Yeah.
on there. I mean, I think he is decent. I think he would not probably stay though under a new regime. I don't think he really has too many connections to Nebraska outside of Mike Riley.
I've heard rumors that possibly Riley as a recruiting coordinator, we're already paying him enough.
One thing I do want to know, to kind of tie up this, I know this podcast is trying to wrap things up here, but I just got one question. What do you think is going to happen to the other staff of the other coaches on this Nebraska team?
Most of them are going to be fired.
Bob Diaco, and you got
Diaco's
Keith
gone.
Williams, and you got all these other.
Williams, Dante, and Perella are probably the only ones I would look at possibly keeping. Dante's an ace recruiter. I think Keith Williams has probably done the best job of anyone on that staff, like developing J.D. Spielman, Stanley Morgan, the wide receiver room. He's a great recruiter. I don't think Perella has shown as much on the field yet, but I can't really blame him. I mean, he was brought in for a 4-3 system. They switched to a 3-4. I don't think really he can take much of the brunt of the blame for that. I think every other coach on that staff, though, probably is little to no chance.
Well, I think if Williams stays, a lot of the players stay. It's not even just wide receivers, but it seems like he's that coach you go to if you need someone to lighten the mood or just help out with life advice and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, he was the Cal Jacobs of their team.
Yeah,
the Millard West football coach here. Very funny guy. Lighten the mood at practice a lot. Just kind of that kind of presence at your team is very good.
Yeah, and I think you see that it's the receivers and how they play. They've run through a brick wall for Keith Williams.
Oh yeah. So, you guys got anything else to add on to the topic today? Jaden, go ahead.
Let's hope that next time we do this, Scott Frost is our head coach and there's blue skies.
Absolutely. It's tough. We're in a tough situation, and I can only hope for the best for our program, especially since we'll be going off to college next year. We'll be able to watch them ourselves, you know.
Yeah, I hope Husker fans can remain with class. I know Mike Riley had to get escorted out after that final Iowa game, so I hope that they stay classy.
Yeah, for sure. And, like you guys said, tough time in Nebraska right now, but we can just hope for the best.
Yeah, at least we're not Tennessee.
Alrighty, folks. I think that's all we have here today. Thank you guys for watching. This has been JD Wessel.
Jaden Cover.
Andrew Pfeiffer.
Craig Sullivan.
With the Wildcat Breakdown. We'll see you guys later.